A warm evening settles over Birmingham, yet behind unremarkable doors, routines that look like work are already in motion. Across the city, another plan moves at its own tempo. A door has been noticed. A time has been chosen. No one expects the night to change. Before the first siren cuts the air, will set everything else in motion. Later, what seemed like harmless images and routine calls will point to something larger than anyone meant to show. This is the story of the J Line and the Oakwood Road network, and how a city's calm surface hid a flood of cocaine and heroin until the smaller slips brought both into the light. Before headlines or raids, there was a phone that rang on time. The J Line took shape under Shaquille Khan and Mohammed Asim, moving cocaine and cannabis across Birmingham and out into Warwickshire. It operated as a typical county line supply model. When the owners decided to step away, they didn't shut the phone down, they sold it. For £40,000, brothers Shamraz and Amrez Alam in Hall Green took control, inheriting a number that already rang and buyers who already trusted it. They weren't gambling on a fresh start, they were buying a business mid-flow. The routes were already mapped by habit, the phone already known, the timing already learned by its customers. The sale reflected the value of an already active drugs line. What mattered the most at that time was the time frame. Through 2020 and 2021, West Midlands Police widened their focus on organised supply, using routine stops, neighbourhood intelligence and digital analysis under Operation Target to map the traffic that sat behind everyday calls and texts. This is where the story begins. With a profitable line, sold as a going concern, moving quietly across Birmingham and Warwickshire while the force's regional strategy tightened around it. The J Line worked because it was simple. Orders came in by text to a single trusted number. Replies went out fast enough to keep regulars from drifting. The footprint was compact, Birmingham spilling into Warwickshire with clipped texts, quick confirmations and quiet drop-offs. What mattered wasn't noise, but reliability. The phone became a habit for almost 400 customers, a saved contact that turned demand into a timetable. Money moved with the same neatness. Instead of hand-to-hand cash at every turn, users were encouraged to pay straight into Mohammed Asim's bank account. It gave the appearance of tidiness, no bundles in door pockets, and it suited a line that wanted volume without friction. In an interview later, Asim would try to distance himself from those transfers, saying he had lent the account to a friend and knew nothing about the activity moving through it. By then, the pattern of deposits and message traffic had already given the account a shape that was hard to explain away. Behind the number sat roles that kept the system running. Valentina Dobre handled storage and packaging, preparing stock so that couriers didn't have to wait and orders didn't stall. Mudassar Hussain and Waqar Ali worked the line, logistics in practice, pickups, drop-offs, the quiet movement that keeps a phone's promises. It wasn't a hierarchy that shouted, it was a chain that didn't break, each link doing just enough to keep the next one moving. This is how the J Line made itself hard to see. A dependable handset, a payment route that looked like everyday banking, and a small team whose jobs fitted together without fuss. All the while, the line ran quietly, and police watched. Messages, transfers, handset swaps and timings were logged, piece by piece, until the picture was complete enough to move from observation to warrants. The trail was largely digital. Detectives pulled thousands of messages from devices linked to the J number, enough traffic to build a working calendar, broadcast texts that lined up with supply days, replies that showed repeat ordering, and a tempo that didn't waver. Images did the rest. Among the recovered media were photos of Mohammed Asim holding bundles of cash and, in separate material, shots of Shamraz Alam posing with money. The cash photos were assessed alongside the message evidence gathered during the investigation. One thread stood out. In interviews and material linked to the line, Valentina Dobre, responsible for storage and packaging, was recorded referring to Shamraz by the nickname Escobar. She couldn't account for it when asked, but the label matched what the phone traffic already suggested about who was in charge. Bank transfers had already given investigators a route into the money, but the messages stitched people to roles piece by piece. The J phone stopped being a mystery contact and became a mapped node with names attached. When the picture was clear enough to act, the warrants landed in sequence. Addresses across Birmingham were hit in early waves, each one treated the same way: secure the rooms, freeze the devices, count what can be counted. In each address, officers found cash, not loose change, but stacked notes tucked into drawers, cupboards, and the places people think are ordinary enough to be invisible. The totals climbed with every search until the figure settled: £212,600 recovered across the operation. One address mattered more than most. At the Hall Green home, linked to Shamraz and Amrez Alam, officers counted over £80,000 on its own, an amount that read like a week-to-week balance rather than a final store. The money didn't sit there as theatre, it sat there because the system was built for volume. Orders rolled in, stock moved out, and cash pooled before it could be laundered or split. Paperwork added a second layer. In one property, officers recovered a list of dozens of customers with amounts owed, a working ledger rather than a boast. In county lines work, ledgers are rare because phones can hold it all. Finding one on paper closes the gap between message traffic and real-world collections. What the raids produced wasn't a single smoking gun, but a consistent pattern replicated from house to house. By the time the last count was logged, the line's finances were no longer a rumor moving through texts. They were a balance sheet on a custody form. The search at Valentina Dobre's address in Edgbaston began quietly and turned up little inside. Then the focus shifted to the street outside, to a car that didn't look out of place and at first glance didn't promise much. But it did more than that. Inside the vehicle, officers recovered a converted firearm, a pellet gun, a starter pistol, and 5 live rounds. Alongside them sat documents linking back to Shamraz Alam. The find changed the reading of the address in an instant. What had looked like a dead end inside the flat became an evidential bridge in the open air. Items that move an investigation from drugs alone into firearms, and papers that help place those items within the J-Line's chain of control. The weapons themselves mattered for what they were and where they were. Stored in a car rather than a bedroom drawer, the cache suggested mobility, equipment that could be moved at short notice and kept from the obvious search points. Legally, the effect was immediate. The case no longer hinged only on supply and proceeds, it carried firearms exposure with it. That shift raises the stakes in charge and sentence, and it narrows the room for argument about the line's intentions. All 7 were taken into custody in coordinated warrants and charged. The case was sent to Birmingham Crown Court, where it moved through final hearings under Operation Target to verdicts and sentencing. Before we reach the trial and sentences, we need to look at the other gang in today's story. Late on 22nd May 2021, 2 cars, an Audi and a BMW, rolled up outside a terraced house on Oakwood Road, Sparkhill. The address wasn't a home in any real sense. It was being used to prepare Class A drugs for onward sale. The visitors weren't there to talk. Masks up, weapons out, machetes and a shotgun at the front door. They forced entry. Inside, Mohammed Ishaq was set upon with a machete, left with a deep slash wound and injuries to his arm. It was fast, direct, and over almost as quickly as it began. Both groups were gone before the street was properly noticed. What remained was the aftermath, with blood, damage, and a house laid out for processing heroin and crack cocaine. Paramedics arrived first and, as they treated the injuries, alerted police to what they were walking into. The call shifted the address from a private room to a crime scene. From that point, the house was read for what it was, a working prep base rather than a user's flat or casual stop. The first task was simple: fix the timeline. Cars, weapons, a forced door, an injured man, a property set up for mixing and dividing bulk Class A. The second was the reason the case would grow. Understand the role of Oakwood Road within a wider operation. From here, the investigation widened. The most important turn came to the investigation when witnesses told them they had seen a group of men hiding items in bushes at nearby Spark Hill Park. As officers closed in on Spark Hill Park, the rival group drove loops around the area, trying to reach the dumped stash first. One of them phoned 999 with a false report of a shooting, a crude diversion to pull units away. It didn't work. The search went ahead. Officers searched the park. In the bushes, they found a mixing bowl filled with brown powder and wrapped bags. Tests confirmed more than 8 kilograms of heroin and over 1 kilogram of crack cocaine, worth about £226,000 before further cutting. Back at the Oakwood Road address, officers found the prep kit: mixing agents, scales, sieves, razor blades, bowls, and plastic bags. Together, the recovery in the park and the equipment in the house showed the property was being used to prepare Class A drugs for onward sale. From there, the focus shifted to evidence you can replay. Detectives carried out major CCTV trawls and mobile phone analysis, plotting movements from Oakwood Road to the park and back across the city. The same phones were active when the cars moved. The evidence showed they knew about the stash, tried to get it back, and worked together. Together, the diversion and the data showed more than a busy night. They showed intent and control, the signs of a conspiracy, not chance. What sat behind the Oakwood Road door was bigger than one address. Detectives linked the crew to at least 6 drug lines selling across Birmingham and tied them to 8 separate seizures between 2020 and 2021. The operation had retail logic: a rubber stamp advertising a line's phone number and opening hours, and photos showing a gang member posing with bowls of drugs. It was not casual supply, it was a system, bulk prepared at the house and pushed out through multiple phones. With the park recovery in hand, the inquiry widened. As we discussed earlier, officers ran CCTV trawls and mobile phone analysis to fix who was at Oakwood Road, who moved towards Spark Hill Park, and how the lines were worked day to day. One name sat higher than the rest: Mohammed Imran Khan. He made the stamp that branded a line and drove others in his BMW after the raid, trying to recover the dumped stash before police did. Around him, the data placed the rest of the group to addresses, cars, and contact windows that matched the 6 active lines. Once identities were set, the takedown followed. In the early hours of 20th October 2021, officers carried out coordinated raids across Birmingham and made multiple arrests. The case that went to court was built in a straight line, followed by the violent raid to drugs in the park, and the prep kit to the phone and CCTV web that held the people to the places. A 13-week trial at Birmingham Crown Court concluded in January, with the 9 men convicted of conspiracy to supply heroin and cocaine. Now, we move to the sentencing for this group. Stay with us, because straight after we'll set out the first gang sentences in full. At Birmingham Crown Court, Mohammed Imran Khan, 37, of Imperial Road. Bordesley Green, identified as the organizer, was jailed for 14 years and 2 months. Kaleem Ullah Khan, 37, of Arden Road, Saltley, seen leaving with a mixing bowl in a bin bag, received 13 years and 3 months. Mohammed Ishaq, 32, of Knoll Road, Spark Hill, attacked inside the address while preparing drugs, was jailed for 10 years and 2 months. Sohail Hussain, 31, of Priory Gate Way, Bordesley Green, who left carrying a machete and a bag of cocaine, was jailed for 9 years and 9 months. Mohammed Hamza Butt, 25, of Cobham Road, Bordesley Green, linked by the distinctive gilet found covering the stash in Spark Hill Park, received 8 years. Riaz Mohammed, 39, of Carlton Road, Bordesley Green, was jailed for 7 years and 6 months. Anwar Awais, 28, of Allenscroft Road, Kings Heath, inside during the attack, and the one who called paramedics, received 7 years and 4 months. Naushad Mohammed, 29, of Bordesley Green, seen at the address, was jailed for 7 years and 2 months. Ahmed Iqbal, 19, of Cherrywood Road, Bordesley Green, was listed for sentencing at a later date. After thorough research, there isn't solid, verifiable information on Ahmed Iqbal's sentencing. Some forums claim he was jailed for 7 years and 2 months, but reputable news outlets and West Midlands Police only state that his sentence was due at a later date. In total, the terms add up to more than 77 years in custody. On the 12th of July 2024 at Birmingham Crown Court, prosecutors framed the J line as a running county lines business, and they walked the jury through all the evidence that we have already covered. Where there were explanations, the court heard them. Only Mohammed Asim and Dobre give explanation that we already covered. All others had entered guilty pleas on their respective counts. Shamraz Alam, 31, co-runner of the line, was jailed for 17 years and 6 months for conspiracy to supply Class A alongside the firearms conviction. His brother Amrez Alam, 30, received 17 years and 6 months on the same basis. Shakil Khan, 29, had been jailed for 10 years. Mudassar Hussain, 39, received 4 years and 3 months. Waqar Ali, 31, for his supply chain role, received a 14-month suspended sentence with 100 hours unpaid work. Mohammed Asim, 30, for criminal property linked to the line's funds, received a 12-month suspended sentence and 50 hours of community service. Valentina Dalbury, 40, was listed for sentencing on 17th of July 2024. Despite thorough checks, no confirmed outcome is publicly reported. If any viewers have a verified update, please let us know in the comments.